All right, let's get into segment number 2 of the show that we like to call Undervalued or Overvalued. And for this segment, of course, we're going to bring in some ringers, some experts from the Roto Street Journal team. Fantasy Fullback Dive is very excited to welcome the Duck. He's obviously a longtime crowd favorite. And also MOH Michael O'Hara, who this is my first time actually ever meeting the guy, but I hear nothing but awesome stuff. So nice to meet you. Welcome to the show. And I hope you really stick it to the Duck, man.
I appreciate it, Truth.
As the host, we're supposed to be unbiased, actually. So you know what? I hope this is a real strong competition between the two of you. I hope you both make great points. And, that's really all I got to say. We're talking about Travis Etienne, a guy who I saw a TikTok mock draft today, and he was, I think, mid-third round, something like that. I don't know where you guys would take him. But we're talking about overvalued versus undervalued. Which one of you guys is going to be taking the position that Etienne is overvalued?
That would be me.
All right, my man. And undervalued, so I'm assuming by process of elimination, that's you, Duck. You think the guy – you've always loved that guy.
Yeah, I know. I tried trading him from – you know what I mean. I can't get the words out.
I remember.
Before, yeah.
He knows he's going to get his ass whooped already, so he's getting nervous, stuttering over himself over there. Come on, Duck. No. Welcome onto the show, boys. Just to make sure Truth did a good job introducing it, but we're going to try this new segment out where we talk about a player where we have differing opinions on staff about him, someone who thinks he's undervalued, someone who thinks he's overvalued, and I have my opinion too. What I want this segment to be is also we'll acknowledge who made the best argument, the most convincing points. Even if I have my opinion, did it change at all? So we'll let you two boys duke it out. How we'll do it is we'll give, the first one 5 or so minutes. We'll give the second one 5 or so minutes. And then if there's any rebuttals or retorts that you guys need to make to what you've heard, and then me and Truth will ultimately decide who won the argument, who dominated. But first, just Duck, welcome to the show. How's everything been?
Oh, everything's been great. Work's been crazy. I wrote a story today. It was absolutely wild. Connected Thomas Edison, Madonna, and both world wars together into a ship that is currently sitting and rotting in Kentucky. It's absolutely
you're talking about Madonna, the pop star, not the mother of Christ, right?
Correct.
Okay. Check.
Excellent. Nice. Yeah, it was absolutely wild. The fun part of my job.
Awesome. And Mike, first time on the show too. How's everything been, man?
Great. I'm excited to be on today, but just slaving away, pumping out articles for RSJ, doing some stock watches, but just looking forward to the season getting going. Training camp starting here in a week or so. So just really excited for football to get going.
Absolutely. Hell yeah, boys. All righty. Well, why don't we get this debate off and running? I'm going to ultimately remove myself and Truth just for the segment for now. So you guys have the floor, have the space. We'll start with overvalued. So Mike, we'll give you the floor to start. I'll leave you on, Duck, so you can kind of listen in, get your points kind of gathered here. And I'm going to remove myself. Mike, you got 5 minutes. Tell me why Travis Etienne is overvalued.
All right. So the first point I really want to hit with Etienne is something that everyone kind of pinpointed coming out of college was his work in the passing game. And in his first season, it was his second season in the NFL, his first season getting consistent work. His rookie season was plagued by injury. He missed the entire season. His role in the passing game was virtually non-existent. He had a 7.8% target share, which ranked 31st among running backs. And truly, I just don't see that increasing at all. I don't really, the path for him to get to a double-digit percentage target share, I just don't really see it. Doug Peterson, the Jaguars head coach, has a history of not really utilizing running backs in the passing game. This one exception was in 2019 when Miles Sanders caught 50 passes, but we have to provide some context there. The top receivers in that wide receiver room in 2019 were Alshon Jeffrey and Nelson Aguilar. And everyone knows about Nelson Aguilar. The guy who couldn't catch the ball and has basically been phased out of the NFL. And on top of that, both of those guys missed at least 6 games those season. Aguilar missing 6 and Jeffrey missing 7. And at times during that season, the Eagles' top wide receiver was Greg Ward. Does anyone really remember that guy? I remember him just from fantasy football. But outside of that, if your top option at wide receiver is Greg Ward, Sanders, the running back, is going to end up getting targets. I mean, targets and receptions. But since then, Doug Peterson, running back, has never really been heavily utilized in the run game. Since that season for Sanders in 2019, no running back has even cracked 35 receptions. No running back has come close, really, to the 50 that Sanders put up in 2019. And on top of that, we see in this upcoming season in Jacksonville, Evan Ingram, the tight end, signs an extension. Christian Kirk is back. Zay Jones is back. And Calvin Ridley has entered the picture. And because of that, it's just really crowded, and there'll be a lot of competition for targets. I just don't see a path for Etienne cracking a double-digit target share. And back to Doug Peterson, not so much in the passing game, but how he prefers to handle his running back room. Everyone really knows that he prefers to have a running back by committee. He came out and said this during the pre-draft process back in April, and that we've seen that throughout his time in Philadelphia. During his time as a head coach, no running back has hit the mark of 14 carries per game, which is really concerning, especially where Etienne's being drafted in the 3rd, 4th round right now. And like I mentioned earlier, Peterson has really emphasized that he wants to take a workload off of Etienne's shoulders. And after overtaking James Robinson, Etienne handled just over 60% of the team's running back carries, which is just not something that we're going to be seeing this year. I fully expect his workload to be reduced. And I think we can expect to see him to handle about 55% of the team's running back carries, which honestly isn't something I'm really interested in. And over the course of the full season, a reduction to 55% of the team's running back carries could be as many as 3 carries a game that he's not seeing anymore. And when I'm talking about that reduction in workload, especially on the ground, that's coming from their new addition, Tank Bigsby. He was their 3rd round draft pick this season, and I think he's going to be taking not a big chunk, but it will definitely be noticeable. He'll be working in a complementary role aside Etienne. But the part of the game that really concerns me about Bigsby taking work away from Etienne is at the goal line. Etienne was one of the league's least efficient goal line rushers last year. He had, I believe, 14 carries from inside the 5, and that only resulted in either 3 or 4 touchdowns. I don't have the number in front of me, but he was notably one of the worst rushers at the goal line. And Bigsby profiles to be a guy that can take away from this role if Etienne remains inefficient. Bigsby's 6 foot, 215 pounds, NFL ready frame, and he's very powerful back who can run the ball downhill and can handle contact. If Etienne remains inefficient, I think that he can have the goal line role taken away from him. And I wouldn't be shocked if we see Bigsby taking the goal line role right away to start the season. On top of that, Bigsby's gotten some really good hype coming out of the Jaguars camp. With the running backs coach for the Jaguars saying that they absolutely love him. I don't have the quote in front of me, but they're in big favor of him. You can take that as you will. It's just training camp hype. But at the end of the day, Etienne's a 4th round pick going in the range of running back 12 to running back 14. And I'm not particularly interested in a running back in a committee. Projects to have a below average target share when compared to other running backs, and may not even be used at the goal line. Just all of these are screaming a guy who's going to disappoint on your roster. Some players who are going in a similar range that I'd rather have are players like Jahmyr Gibbs, Jerry Jeudy, or even going the quarterback route with Lamar Jackson. And you could even wait, if you're looking to get a running back in that range, you can wait on players like Aaron Jones, J.K. Dobbins, or even Cam Akers.
Oof. Timed up perfectly. The 1 minute timer just went off. Well done. Well said. Some very intriguing points for all of us to consider. Duckling, the floor is, let me just set the timer to make sure you get the equal opportunity. The floor is now yours. Why is Travis Etienne undervalued?
Well, the main crux of my argument comes with 2 words, some of my favorite words: positive regression. It alludes sort of to what you're talking about. I have a story for you. I told the Wolf a similar story. Do you know a man by the name of Nicholas Chubb? I assume you do, right? Yeah. One year he had 14 rushes at the goal line and rushed for negative 15 yards. That's Nick Chubb. That's a big, powerful bruising back. The team talked about bringing in Kareem Hunt more to serve as the goal line back And guess what? Nick Chubb feasted at the goal line the next year. Now, not exactly the same style of running back, but 1 year does not a goal line back make. Not to mention that was Etienne's first year coming back off of a Liz Frank injury, which is notorious for draining a person's explosivity and their power. Now, Etienne is not exactly what you would call a power back by any stretch of the imagination, but he is more than capable of laying the thunder. If you don't believe me, go watch his tape at Clemson. He's breaking tackles left and right physically and juking people out. He has the ability to create for himself. Now, getting over to sort of the point that you were talking about, you said you saw him around 55% of the rushes, correct?
Yeah, in that range.
Last year, he only saw 49% of the total team rushes, and he put up 1,125 yards. I'm getting ahead of myself here on only 220 rushes at a clip of 5.1. I don't expect him to do quite 5.1. I had him around 4.8, but I had him around 53% of the team rushes, which, given the fact that Jacksonville ran less plays last year than their opponents, I expect that to flip. I expect that to flip a lot. That offense is growing, ascending, and I fully expect them to be a bit of a pass funnel offense, sort of like what you said. You follow the team's moves. I expect them to be a pass funnel offense. Now, what makes the difference is last year, Jacksonville targeted running backs at the 5th lowest rate in the league at only 14%. League average was 18%. Doug Peterson came out this year and was talking about wanting to give Travis Etienne a larger role in this offense. And that would involve using his specialty with speed, hitting the gaps, and catching the ball in space and creating with that. He averaged, 9.1 yards per reception? It might have been 9 flat. Either way, that's an elite number for a running back. And that Miles Sanders year that you were referencing, the very next year, he saw just a slight reduction in his target share with a full complement around him, meaning Doug Peterson will bump up a guy's workload if he proves his mettle and he proves his worth. Now, as for like Etienne in general, we're talking about, where did I have these stats? We'll pull up these stats. I'm schmoozing a little bit. According to the Next Gen Stats, Etienne was the league's 3rd most explosive player, not just running back, ranking only behind Kenneth Walker and Justin Fields. He led the league in total rush yards over expectation with the worst offensive line in terms of run blocking in the league, getting 5.1 a clip. You're telling me that guy is going to get taken off the field more for a 3rd-round running back? I remind you, Travis Etienne is a 1st-round running back. He has 1st-round capital. And in that article, everybody was just freaking out that just dropped yesterday about how singing Tank Bigsby's praises, they were very well deserved. But right at the very start, it said, this is Travis Etienne's backfield. He is, see if I can pull up the exact quote. I have it in front of me. I don't care if that has no time. There is no question the Jaguars will have a clear number 1 running back in Travis Etienne. But the snaps where Etienne isn't on the field can still be won, meaning this is Etienne's backfield. It's his to work with. Where's my article info? I got a bunch of tabs pulled up. Travis Etienne was close to breaking out last year, but a lack of touchdowns held him back. He was tackled so often inside the 5. He averaged over 5 a carry, over 9 of reception. This year, the Jaguars offense should take a big leap forward in year 2 with Doug Peterson. Expect Etienne to add his 5 touchdowns from 22 and crack the top 5 for fantasy running backs. That's Ryan Weiss from Club FFL. The Jaguars came out recently, said they were confident in Travis Etienne. I'm sorry, I'm not as articulate as you are. My ADHD gets me running. And I'm going to hang my hat on the Jaguars planning to have a bigger role for Etienne. I grant you he might lose some goal line opportunities to Tank, but he's not going to lose them all. And he's not going to convert 4 out of 40 attempts inside the red zone for a touchdown. That's just not going to happen. He's due for positive regression. If he gets to 8 touchdowns on the ground, which I think we can both agree is very doable, especially for one of the league's most explosive players, he can catch 2 to 4 touchdowns. And he had, 1,400 yards from scrimmage last year. He might hit 16 this year. I think that he's being a little slept on.
Time is up, Duckling. All righty. Duck has made his points. Mike has made his points. Let me bring in the truth here. I want to give you guys a chance to respond to each other, but we're also running slightly above time here. So, Mike, if you have one thing you can say to Duck, what would be your one response? And then, Duck, if you have one response to Mike, what would be your one response?
The one thing I will say is I agree that Etienne has the athleticism and explosivity to burn me this year and break out. But the history of Doug Peterson and how he uses his running backs with the lack of receiving work and the lack of high workload, it's not something that's appealing to me. And there's other options that I'd rather have, especially in PPR formats.
Duckland?
Absolutely. Tank Bigsby is a great overall back. He's very well-rounded. He doesn't do anything spectacular, but he does everything well. My final point is the history of first-year running backs historically getting more targets from year one to year two, and we're going to agree to call Etienne's year last year his year one, right? Jamal Charles saw an uptick of like 39 to 55 targets year one to year two. Joe Mixon went up from 34 to 55. I'm naming all sorts of backs that share similarities to Etienne. LaShawn McCoy jumped from 55 to 91. And Zeke jumped up from 39 to what would have came out to about 60 if he would have played all 16 games. He was suspended for 6 that year. Just a little laying out the history of running backs getting more targets year one to year two.
All righty.
Let me ask you guys each a question. I mean, you can answer consensus here. What is the average draft spot for Etienne in a snake draft, would you guys say? When we're determining overrated, underrated, where is he usually going?
He's going right now about early fourth is his fourth? Late third, early fourth. Yeah.
Okay. And what RB is he? Do you know that off the top of your head?
Yeah, he's going anywhere between 12 and 14 right now.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, fringe RB1 right now, yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yes. So my take, and then Truth, you can vote for your winner. I am one, and Duck, you came with an uphill climb here because I was on the overvalued side entering this, just as my personal opinion. And I don't leave here to convince me that he's undervalued. I would have needed to be convinced he was going to jump in receptions and that he might score some more touchdowns. And I don't think with Calvin Ridley coming in with more mouths to feed with Doug Peterson's history beyond that 1 year with Sanders, I don't think I am compelled enough quite yet after your argument. You did convince me, Duck, that I didn't realize some of those explosive runs. In fact, some of those stats about the after contact stuff, I did not realize he was as strong of a runner as I may have given him credit for. So I did, after reading your article and hearing your stuff, I bumped up his rushing yards per clip that I had in my projections, his rushing yardage. I even have him at 53% rushing share too. So I have him still seeing the majority of the work, but I just was not convinced enough. And I think Mike brought up some good points about the goal line inefficiency. Maybe it's a Liz Frank. I think it's worth bringing up. But ultimately, I do still side on overvalued. I have not been convinced enough yet, Duck, despite some of the intriguing points you made about him as a runner. I don't buy just because some other great backs jumped in year two. I just think there's too many mouths. And now that's even more crowded, I do not see the regression, the positive regression that you might be thinking of. So I award 1 point to Michael. What do you say, Mr. Truth?
This is one of my favorite things just to do, not only for the Roto Street Journal and Fantasy Fullback Dive, but just in life, which is where I get to kind of sit in judgment over guys that are smarter than me. And like just for some reason, this is America. This is how it works. Yeah, this guy is going to decide which one of you is better, even though you're both way more knowledgeable than he is. I actually like this topic going in because although I kind of have my gut feelings about Etienne, you guys both hit me with a lot of info that I didn't know. So thanks for that. I thought you both did a good job. Kind of agree with the Wolf in that Duck had an uphill climb. And one thing about Duck is that when he believes in somebody, man, he goes to the mat for him. Like he is a ride or die. Like he's the guy. If he's loyal to you, like he's doesn't matter what happens, he's with you. So here's what I thought. I thought that MOH made a really good point, just talking about the Doug Peterson when Greg Ward led Philly, for instance. That took me back. I was like, oh yeah, I remember Greg Ward. And how it made sense that the running back was getting a little more love when Greg Ward was the guy. And then he brought up the receiving core in Jacksonville, and I was like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. So he's already only getting 7.8%, I think, of the target share. Seeing him jump too much from that, it would be counterintuitive, I would say. Doug made a good point, I thought, when he just talked about how few plays Jacksonville ran relative to the league last year and how they almost certainly will see a bump. And I do agree with that. I'm not sure the percentage bump that they're going to see would necessarily, I don't know, give Etienne the jump that he would need to get for him to be like undervalued at this point. I did think that it was interesting when Duck brought up the over expected yards from Etienne. I got to say, I always see that stat as a double-edged sword. Like on one end, you can look at it and say, wow, what an incredible accomplishment. This guy, he got 200 more yards than he should have gotten. I mean, hats off to him. That's great. I watch a lot of Premier League soccer, and whenever it's like a guy gets more goals expected than he should have, you're like, wow, that's incredible. What an amazing individual effort. I'll bet he scores less next year. Is usually how that ends up coming out. I mean, it could go the other way, but I'm always impressed by that. And then I'm always like, I could see him going downhill because sometimes that stuff's fluky. So who knows what's going to happen. Also, Duck, last but not least, don't be comparing Etienne to Jamal Charles. That's sacrilege in this house.
I love Jamal Charles.
Anyway, so I would give my point to MOH, but I thought that Duck made some excellent points. We'll see how the over expected yards ends up shaking out. And, there's always a part of me, even though I love to trash him, it's kind of always kind of in the back of my mind pulling for Duck to get these things right because I love listening to him on the group chat when he's right about stuff.
Oh, man. Yeah, Duck. So now you have 3 against you here. So if Etienne ends up just lighting the league on fire,
we're going to hear
my word, all 3 of us will sit live and you can just harpoon, just destroy us live. I will absolutely allow that.
We'll give you 5 minutes
give you 5 minutes to tell us how idiotic we all are for ever doubting you, Duckling. Absolutely.
Y'all keep going against me, and you guys keep calling me the running back guru.
Hey, that's true. Of all people I should trust for running backs, it should be the Duck who just has nailed breakout after breakout after breakout. So I will. That's part of why I wanted to be convinced by you. I do trust all your opinions too. And I think Mike said it at the end there too. If a talent like Etienne certainly is good enough to prove all of us wrong by just year 2. I mean, it is a sophomore season again. He could just take a natural step forward, a year removed from the surgery, and just light it on fire. But and I did truth that point about the more plays being run. I thought that was a great one too. You guys did both. It's tough. You both made great points, and that's why we wanted.
To be fair, it was the Ducks point. I just regurgitated it.
No, I know. I thought it was a really good one to bring up. I love that point that Duck made. So, really well argued in both cases. But I still side on overvalued. Sounds like Truth and Mike staying that way too, despite Duck's valiant efforts over here. So thank you for joining.
Mike, you've done well.
I appreciate it, Doc.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah, we need to run.
We'll definitely have more of these as well. I love this segment. I think this is a fun one. We'll definitely have to find some more opinions that we're all split on as a staff and get some more debate going on.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. Do we have in the budget for us to really put this segment over the top, get some like judicial robes and like British like
exactly
wigs that the judges wear?
Exactly.
Because I'm just saying I would do that if I had to do it.
The next big purchase for the RSJ will be a gavel and a wig for the judge. Yes, I love that.
Do I get the bonus points for wearing swag?
Bonus point for Duck. That's true. Beautiful swag.
You still lose 2-1 even with the bonus point.
Love it. All right, gentlemen. Well, thanks again for your time. Great arguments both ways. And we look forward to having you back on soon.
Oh, yeah.
See you guys.
Later, guys.
What is up, you fantasy wolf? Thanks so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, share your thoughts in the comments, check out some more videos, and join the newest Wolfpack by subscribing below.